You've been waiting all week for that Saturday show. Tune in, see what happened, let your troubles go. Work real hard, now it's time to take it slow. Kick back and relax with that Saturday show.
Good morning, Albuquerque, and welcome to another great episode of That Saturday Show, brought to you by the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice, your voice and your ally in the work for social justice. We have another incredible show for you today as we celebrate the birthday of one fantastic woman. We take another look, at the not-so-great push for a new sports stadium here. The Veterans for Peace Scholarship Program happening later this day. Our annual gala, and yes, film night is back at the center. I'm Jim Harvey, your host. And before we get deep into today's show, just a quick question. Governor Lujan Grisham pays $150,000 from her campaign to settle a bizarre lawsuit. What's up, Governor? We're joined today by the wonderful Mariel Nanasi, who will be joining us for a discussion about the shady dealings of PNM and Avangrid and what this could mean for electricity and the power industry here in New Mexico. Welcome, Mariel.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. But before we get into that, you know it, let me get this off my chest. Remember these names: Peter Travasani, Ian McKinnon, Ed Garcia, Jason Harrington, Ben Spencer. These are the men who would displace hundreds of families, ignore the homeless, and build a sports stadium to make loads more money for themselves while we, the taxpayers, get stuck with the tab. We're hoping that the voters reject the notion that the city should put us on the hook for $50 million in bonds to pay for a playground for the rich. Albuquerque rents alone have more than doubled since January of this year, and landlords are ignoring the eviction moratorium to the point that they are even returning relief checks issued by the city on behalf of their tenants. They know they can get more money from new tenants, and they just don't care. The city is showing little interest in protecting tenants, but instead are quietly yielding to the influence of the real estate and property owners. The problem only gets worse when you throw absentee landlords into the equation. Can we say Arizona and California, to name a few places? We need to go after them. Now, I originally thought that building the stadium, now, how does all this tie in with the stadium? Simply put, the stadium opens up the door for gentrification, higher rents, increased property taxes, and displaced individuals and families will increase yet again. I originally thought that building the stadium in the International District would be a good thing and that it would bring new economic growth to the community. But after a closer look, I realized that the increased security issue alone would represent more law enforcement oppression against local residents, and that ain't good. No, we don't need another sports venue in Albuquerque. Money tied into bond revenues could be better spent on real housing for people who need it. It would also help to see our city leaders to protect the renting tenants here. Protect the renting tenants who are being savaged by unscrupulous landlords and developers. The city's got to get on the right side. It just has to end. It has to end. Sally Alice Thompson, an incredible woman Her birthday was yesterday. She just turned 98 years old. And she's still out there fighting for social justice at every turn. Sally Alice, we got a great photograph of her too. Sally Alice did a peace walk across Russia in 1987. She walked to San Francisco from here. She did a cross-country walk in 1986, speaking out for peace, speaking out against war, speaking out against nuclear proliferation. And mind you, she's getting ready to do these things again in some form because the United States government is retooling Los Alamos labs to build a new class, a new generation of nuclear weapons. And guess what, folks? That's against international law. That's a violation of international law. And this government that we thought was going to make a difference, this government that we thought was going to make a difference, is right there in the middle of reallocating funds to make this happen. When Sally Alice walked to Santa Fe to make these points, we owe her a debt of gratitude. She's the recipient of the Dolores Huerta Award. And the city of Albuquerque recently named Sally Alice Thompson Day in her honor. We owe a lot to Sally Alice. She's a benefactor of the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice. We love this woman, and she stands out as an example. Happy birthday, Sally Alice Thompson. Now, Mariel, we've got you here, and we've got a lot to talk about. This Avangrid PNM merger, it's driving me crazy because every time I turn on the television, I see ads that make it sound like it's a done deal. Every time I open up newspapers, I see ads that make it sound like a done deal. What's going on?
It's not a done deal.
Thank you.
It is not a done deal. I am the executive director of New Energy Economy, and we have been objecting and opposing this $8 billion merger between Avangrid and Iberdola. Iberdola is the parent company from Spain of Avangrid. Iberdola owns 81% of Avangrid stock.
Aren't they caught up in some legal?
They are caught up.
Yes.
Right now, there's an investigation in Spain for bribery and fraud.
Wow.
And falsification of documents. And the CEO of Iberdola and 3 other executive committee, 2 current executive committee members and 1 former executive committee member are being investigated. And so that's happening. That just happened in June of this year. And one of the issues is, why are they coming here? Why are they coming here? Why is this multinational billion-dollar company coming here? And we asked them about that at the hearing. There's a hearing that happened in front of the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission, and I was involved in that hearing. And what was one of the things that was stunning was the CEO of Avangrid, his name, wait a second, I'll tell you in 1 second what it is, Mr. Kump, was being cross-examined. And he was asked, well, why do you want to come here? And he says, this is literally what he said. He said, we see PNM as a beachhead. That's a quote.
A beachhead.
A beachhead. And I actually looked it up. And if you want to, you can look it up too. What is the definition of a beachhead? It's a military term,
that's
right?
right?
It's when you land before you attack the enemy. So they said, we see PNM as a beachhead, and we hope to consolidate the energy resources in New Mexico, all the solar and wind, so that we can sell it. And we can use PNM, the monopoly, the electric monopoly, as a way to consolidate all energy resources so that we can sell it all over the Southwest, but also to Mexico and to California and to Arizona, and everywhere is literally where they said they were like gaga in their eyes with the financial opportunities for growth, is what they said. And so my concern is about their track record. What is their track record? Their track record, they're in Maine. They own another company that's quite similar to P&M, almost about the same number of ratepayers there. And it's called Central Maine Power. And Central Maine Power has now the highest residential rates in the entire country for a utility that size, has the most brownouts and blackouts. Well, what is a utility supposed to do? It's supposed to provide electricity and also charge you for that electricity through your bills. So if you look at Avangrid's track record, and just in the last 5 years alone, in Maine, in Connecticut, and New York, they've amassed $60 million worth of penalties and violations. And I have to just tell you that P&M doesn't have that many penalties and violations.
That's right.
So why I thought I was, like so many other people, you know, they have that green logo and you're like, ooh, yeah. I want some more green energy because P&M certainly has done a slow walk to green energy.
That's the truth.
They're at about 10 or 12% clean energy. Still mostly in coal, then nuclear. That's their next biggest chunk. Then gas, then wind, then solar. They have less than 4% solar in the land of the sun Zia on our flag. P&M has less than 4% solar. It's essentially criminal. And so when we asked Avangrid, you know, well, why else are you coming here then, besides the whole, they want to grow, and that's why they're paying so much for the P&M, it's called a control premium to own it, which is that they can control it. They said, well, we want to, you know, take all these renewables and sell them to other places and create, to take advantage of lucrative markets, they say.
Wow.
So when we saw what they were doing in Maine, which is, it's very similar there, they had a deal with Hydroelectric Quebec and wanted to move this hydroelectric power to the load center in Massachusetts and go through, literally bulldoze, a pristine forest in Maine.
Good grief.
And that is what I am afraid of for New Mexico.
Yeah.
That really what their plan is to not really focus on P&M ratepayers, just like they haven't focused on Central Maine ratepayers, but to use it as a jumping off point, like they said, a beachhead, to sell to other markets. Well, that's not going to help New Mexico.
Not at all.
They're going to extract the wealth of our resources, of our natural resources for their private gain.
And sell it to somebody else.
And sell it to somebody else.
Sell it to somebody else.
And literally take the money and move it not only to Wall Street, but to Spain.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like unrenewable energy at all cost, and especially at a higher cost ultimately to us, the consumers. I'm so glad that I'm a solar customer. I don't know what to do, but even solar might be on the hit list for this company. They'd find some way to worm their way in, you know, and ultimately end up taxing us solar customers as well, I'm sure.
Well, it's interesting because that's another thing. They're right now being investigated in Maine for undermining community solar and rooftop solar development. Right now, there's a pending investigation in the equivalent of the Public Regulatory Commission there. So that's another concern that we have. And them trying to essentially cut off all competition at its knees, and so that they can consolidate power literally and figuratively and monetarily.
So do they own some of the energy producing, the old energy producing resources like natural gas and coal mines and oil fields and.
Well, they pretend to be green, and they have great PR, as you know. You all have
We've seen it.
You've seen it. You've heard it on the radio and seen it on TV commercials. The truth is that they are largely a natural gas company. And then they have a bunch of hydro and damming. They've dammed a lot all over the world. And then they have nuclear. They also have wind, but less than 2% solar on in their portfolio. So here we were thinking, okay, we want a new company with experience to transition us, right? Which is what PNM has been on the slow walk to, from fossil fuels to renewables and to storage. And frankly, Avangrid doesn't have a whole lot of experience with that. They also said at the hearing, in response to questions by Commissioner Cynthia Hall, who most of you in Albuquerque, that's your commissioner at the PRC, she asked them, well, do you have a lot of experience, allowing solar to be on the grid? And they said, well, his answer was, we're learning on the fly.
Huh?
And so,
after all these years that they've been on the East Coast, up in New England, they're still learning on the fly.
Because they don't, so that's the problem. That's one of the problems, is they're not the renewable energy industry that they
claim they are.
That they claim they are, that we need, and that I'll just move into what I'd prefer, which is to reject this merger for a whole bunch of reasons, including the fact of their poor track record and their ill experience with solar, but also because we have an opportunity here. And that opportunity could be New Mexicans. So what if we had a public power entity and the people of the state of New Mexico owned the grid, and then we could have municipalities and tribes produce their own energy or purchase, or a combination of it. And so then the profits go back, repurposed back into other community needs. You were talking about homelessness, healthcare, education, all the things that we care so deeply about.
Any models for that?
There are models for that. There's mostly municipalization, but there's also what's called community choice aggregation, which is the aggregation of different communities, which has been extraordinarily popular in 11 states now, because people are finding that they want to move towards renewables quicker than the utility model, because the utility model is all about profit.
That's right.
And it's about literally extracting the wealth from New Mexico and exporting it. It's not only extracting the coal from the ground, or the gas from the ground, or the uranium from the ground, but it's extracting the wealth from the people. Every month, we get that electric bill, and it goes up and up and up. When you have solar, as you do and I do as well, you get a hedge against rising utility rates. And so if we could, my dream is that we could have an economic engine here in New Mexico, and keep the money here, be the first state in the country to be 100% renewables. I believe that we could get there 5 or 10 years completely. And then if we wanted to sell our renewables, it could be the economic engine for the state that we need.
Yeah, and the topography of New Mexico just makes us an ideal place for renewable energy. When I first got here and I was working for Red Cross, I used to drive through the southeast and southwest parts of the state on a regular basis, and the open land that could lend itself to solar, wind, it's just amazing, and yet I couldn't find any. So that was sort of disappointing to me that would happen. But yeah, this is a perfect place to really go 100% renewable energy. So now I don't get into a lot of rumors, but I heard a few months ago that there was a dust-up because of some of the legal shenanigans going on here in the state with, who was it, the Attorney General and the attorney that was representing this whole merger. You know, anything happening there?
Yes, so, well, I was alarmed that Attorney General Hector Balderas signed off on the merger agreement, the stipulation it's called. It's a settlement agreement, essentially, and for so little. And especially when he had two really great experts. So there's the Attorney General, but really there's an Assistant Attorney General who handles the case. And the Assistant Attorney General had filed testimony by two experts who were completely against the merger and said it was not in the public interest, which is the legal standard, and said, you know, what Avangrid and Iberdola were offering were inadequate, and also that there were not adequate consumer protections that were part of the merger, especially given some of the shenanigans that they have pulled in internationally and also in the United States, their history. So I was really excited by this testimony. And then 20 days later, 18 days later, Hector Balderas settled. So I was like, why? There seems to be a chasm between what his experts filed in testimony, which was super powerful, and then what he settled for.
Shady.
So I was looking into it, and I found out that Iberdola and Avangrid hired Marcus Royale for $400 an hour, up to $350,000, and in July, actually, had used up the $250,000 of it and raised the contract price to $350,000. And I'm thinking, where did that money go?
Yeah.
Where did that money go
from?
And and the thing is that I asked in Discovery, it's called, questions about, well, how much did you work for this, Mr. Royale? How many times did you meet with the Attorney General? And it was like 17 times. So let's say, you know, and that was during during COVID, so that they were only meeting on the phone or on video. So let's say they met 2 or 3 hours, that would be 60 hours.
60 hours, right.
And 60 times, you know, 6 times more, you know,
Yeah.
doesn't even come close to $250,000.
That's right.
So what did that money actually pay for is a question I had. And so then I asked the Attorney General for some other information through IPRA, which is the Inspection of Public Records Act.
Right.
And I said, how many cases has the Attorney General given Marcus Royale, his friend and former law partner, compared to how many other cases he's given to other attorneys? Now, every Attorney General across the United States is allowed to give certain cases to private counsel. Why? Because the idea is, okay, you have a certain specialty in PCBs and water, and that's your like legal specialty. Well, it's better for the state of New Mexico to give it to you,
right.
even though we're going to pay you an hourly rate, as opposed to another lawyer who might be a really good lawyer in the Attorney General's office, but has no idea, has no experience in PCBs and water and that kind of litigation. So the idea is that you have the expertise and you'll know how to get to the answers quicker, and the opponents will see that you're the expert in the field. So they do that all the time. That's not the unkosher part. And in fact, Hector Balderas has done that in certain circumstances, given cases to certain lawyers with specialties. But when you compare that to how many cases Hector Balderas has given to Marcus Royale, at least 3 or 4 times the number of any other attorney. And these are the most lucrative cases.
Shady.
So we filed something with the disciplinary board. We asked the auditor, Brian Colon, his friend, both of their friends, so it's like a little triangle there, to investigate. We haven't heard anything back from the auditor. And then we also filed an ethics commission complaint, and that is currently under investigation.
Wow, that's some shady dealings. We've got about 2 minutes left, and there are a couple of things that I just can't let you get away from here without sharing with us. One, Shiprock.
What's happening in Farmington?
What's happening up there?
And the Four Corners coal plant.
Right.
I actually just filed a brief in that case as well. So P&M had reinvested in Four Corners in 2013 based on no legitimate financial analysis. So they invested $1 billion in that coal plant, which has been has a history of all sorts of violations, especially around, it's on the Navajo Nation, of contamination and other kinds of, to the water and to the land. And so in 2013, P&M reinvested nearly $1 billion in the Four Corners plant, and did so based on a flawed, this is not only my words, but that's what the Public Regulation Commission found, a flawed financial analysis from 19 months beforehand.
Good grief.
And so could you imagine, like, you're going to go buy a house? That's, like, for us, a big financial commitment, right? So what do you say to your realtor? You say, show me the comps. Like, there's a slang word for that. What does that mean? Show me the comparables. And what is important is that when a utility invests for us, if they invest prudently, that's the legal standard, like responsibly, then we have to pay in increased rates. But when they invest imprudently, we're supposed to be held harmless. And I won a case in front of the Supreme Court that made that law. And Four Corners, P&M was found to have invested imprudently. But they said, hey, we got the Energy Transition Act passed in 2019, and that supersedes any question of imprudence that we had. And so we are arguing, no, we don't owe you any money. You should never have invested in coal at that time. Everybody was getting out of coal, but why did you double down? And now you want us to pay $300 million, which is what's up in front of the PRC, for the imprudent actions of utility management.
Wow.
So I'm hoping that we'll win.
Great. What can I tell you? Mariel Nanasi, Executive Director of New Energy Economy. We could go on on this.
Lots to talk about.
Thank you so much, and we're just going to have you come back. That's all there is to it.
Thank you. There's other cases that are up around nuclear. I know that you were talking, about that. P&M's nuclear investments also were imprudent. Anyway, there's lots to talk about. So I hope that we can win against the merger, and then hopefully people will follow the effort to create public power in New Mexico.
And we'll be looking for some good news.
Yeah,
All
hopefully.
right. Good news. Speaking of good news, let's go to Hassani with good news. Hassani, what have you got for us today?
Hello and welcome to Good News News. I'm your correspondent, Hassani Olujimi, and I'm Gugu for Good News. The goal of this segment is to inspire and uplift you, the viewer, with nothing but good news. Let's jump right in. Our 2 stories comes from our good friends at somethinggood.com. The first story is titled, Putting Others First. Let's take a look, shall we?
The Kitchen of Clay County has been serving meals to those in need for more than a decade.
We serve a lot of elderly people. We see families. We see just people who are food insufficient.
Jennifer Knight is the vice president of the nonprofit.
How big is the need in the community?
know the need is significant right now, especially with the COVID numbers, being what they were. There's a lot of need.
The organization is officially back open after being closed for several months because of the pandemic.
What does it mean to people in this community to have this available? We've heard so many stories. There was a gentleman that came here a couple of weeks ago and said, if I hadn't seen your sign, I wouldn't have eaten today.
Making a difference one meal at a time.
Now, isn't that good news? Why did the tomato turn red? Because it saw the salad dressing. That was good. Well, our next story is titled A Star of Hope. Let's take a look.
The Allegheny Highlands are full of natural beauty, but Ricky Barnett says the most beautiful thing he ever found
This is like my shooting star.
came a long way away from the mountains.
This balloon has been a great inspiration to me and my family. It's kind of drew us together here in the last couple of days, and there is hope.
Barnett and his son Skylar found the balloon while hiking in the woods near his Covington home this week.
We walked over and he read it to me, and I was surprised that somebody do something like that.
They soon learned this inspirational object traveled to Virginia all the way from Texas.
Something that done blew in, and come to find out this was something special to someone else.
Blast off!
Tammy Hansen and her grandchildren lost a balloon near Houston,
Oh, they're going straight up. That's so cool. I love it.
inscribed with a hopeful message and her email address.
We were saying the whole time, we're like, just wanted to, if somebody would actually find them or they just end up in the ocean. I'm still smiling about it.
Eagle Dragon, just like this.
It landed at the best possible time. Barnett just lost his job of 30 years and is about to lose his health insurance as well.
This was really needed badly. We was very depressed. And it's amazing how something this simple and small can make an inspiration in somebody's life.
The Barnetts have already wished on this falling star,
My wish is for everybody to come together, be peaceful.
and the star has already granted the family their most important wish.
The fact that my son was with me when I found it. Does he know that? He does now.
Now, isn't that good news? That was really a wonderful story. Now, I try to avoid jokes about balloons, but sometimes they just get carried away. Hey, our good friend and sassy grandmother, Little Big Mama, is here. What do you have in store for us today, lady?
Thank you, Hassani. I just want to tell your viewers, instead of the John, I call my bathroom the gym. It sounds more impressive when I tell people I go to the gym first thing in the morning. Bye, baby.
She is a blast. Thank you, Little Big Mama. As we always say, the best way to turn a frown upside down is to get goo-goo for good news. I'm your correspondent, Hassani Olujimi, featuring Little Big Mama, and we'll see you right here next time on That Saturday Show with more good news.
Welcome back to That Saturday Show. I'm Jim Harvey, your host, and as we are continuing with today's exciting programming, we have with us an absolutely wonderful guest. His name is Ed Singularity, and he is the executive director of Trinity House. Trinity House is one of our partners in many of the endeavors we do here. He's also a PAJOLA member, Peace and Justice Organizations Linking Arms. But one of the fantastic things that we benefit from in our partnership with Trinity House is with our food distribution services on Saturday. They provide us with a lot of food, particularly ready-to-eat meals, because so many of our clients that come to get food are people who are unhoused, which means then that they have no place to cook food. And so even though we pride ourselves in the distribution of lots of fresh food, lots of foods that can be prepared in one's kitchen, there are people who don't have a kitchen. And that's one of the roles that Trinity House has been playing for us. And so here we are today. And let's welcome to That Saturday Show Ed Singularity. Ed, welcome.
Thank you.
So, Ed, tell us a little bit more about Trinity House, and then I'm going to get personal and say, and tell us about you and what brought you to Albuquerque.
Okay, well, that's the appropriate order of business. Trinity House has been here 21 years. I've heard varying accounts. Well, before I got here, let's say around 2001, the portentous year of 2001. It is a Catholic worker house. It is one of 150 some that are scattered around, mostly in North America, but around the world, beyond that. A Catholic worker house is a house of hospitality. The concept is that we house the homeless and feed the hungry and so forth. It's all about hospitality and generosity and grace, essentially. Catholic Worker is a movement. It is not a formal organization. There is no central headquarters. There is no charter or certification. I can, Jim, if you want to start a Catholic Worker House over there at the Peace and Justice Center, you would just declare yourself a Catholic Worker House and proceed.
Wow.
How about that? You're already a 501c3, so, paperwork is essentially done.
All right.
So we'll talk about affiliation on that one.
That's right.
I'm not Catholic, and I don't know whether you are, and I'm kind of a slacker. So the moniker is not really accurate, Catholic Worker, but it is a thing, and I'm very happy to be doing it. The thing started in the 30s in the depths of the Depression in the Bowery. Dorothy Day and Peter Morin had this notion of taking in people with severe need and taking care of them until they could self-sustain. Sometimes that took a week, sometimes it took never. So that's kind of what our mission is. We're not in a depression, we're in a recession, pandemic mess, ecological and otherwise. So I literally got a call. I'm sort of merging myself now with the Catholic Worker. Is that all right?
That's great.
Okay. I started going to something called the Living School here, which is based in Albuquerque. It is a Richard Rohr sponsored program out of the Center for Action and Contemplation. And that's probably the first place I heard about Dorothy Day and her work. That is an organization that teaches and informs us how to be better contemplatives and better activists at the same time. Back in June of last year, I got a call from a friend from Charlotte, North Carolina, where I'm from, saying, hey, I was talking to somebody on the board of a Catholic worker house in Albuquerque. Would you be interested in putting your name in as the director? And I said, wow, I'm not Catholic nor much of a worker. This was a friend who knew I was a semi-retired and mostly slacker dude that was working in a nursing home. Anyway, I think I was the only candidate. Anyway, I got the job. It doesn't pay anything except life experience and wonderful people. That's what it pays.
Right.
I'm on Social Security, so that's fine. And to sort of segue back into the food, 4 or 5 days a week, I and other volunteers, including Chandra Doran, the president of the board, we have a minivan and other vehicles, and we go to the backs of Sprouts and Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and occasionally Costco, and we reap an amazing reward of food that is nowhere near spoiled and is otherwise going to end up in the landfill as methane. So we intervene, as do many other organizations in town, and we pick it up on the loading dock, generally in the early morning, and then we scatter about town, going to places such as the Peace and Justice Center or the Interfaith Bible Center, also over a couple of other organizations, including our sister Catholic Worker House in the Chamber of Commerce's International Zone, aka the War Zone, where the homeless people are numerous. So we are distributing this deli, produce, bakery, dessert, smorgasbord of good stuff to people who need to eat. So I spend a lot of time doing that.
That's great. That's great.
But there are other things we do too.
Fantastic. And I want to hear about those as well. So let's take a quick break and we'll get back to you in a minute. Back to the studio.
Ever wanted to do more for social justice and other major issues in Albuquerque, New Mexico? If so, then the Center for Peace and Justice is just for you. Devoted to bringing true-centered discussions about critical social justice issues in our state, globally, through various means and actions, we provide a positive attitude in everything we do. We offer incredible opportunities to those who want to join our team to learn important skills that are needed to run a nonprofit organization. Please be a member or volunteer, or have your group join us. There's space for everyone who's interested in what we do here at the Peace Center. For more information, call us at 505-268-9557. Go to our website at abqpeaceandjustice.org or email us at www.abqpeaceandjustice.org. Thank you.
And we are back with Ed Singularity. And Ed, tell us, where'd you come from?
I have roots in the great state of North Carolina, Essequan Videri, for all of those familiar with that part of the world. My family goes back to 1729 in eastern North Carolina. My grandfather was born in Bladen County, which is otherwise, it's known for swine population, both human and otherwise. And I'm kidding about that, sorry. But I will say that you may have heard of the 9th Congressional District scam that went on a couple of years ago, where one of my cousins was collecting absentee ballots from poor Black people and throwing them in the trash. You may have heard about that. Anyway, those are my peeps. But most recently, I am from Charlotte, where I was practicing law and then not practicing law and then working in a nursing home, doing activities. And that's when the call came a little over a year ago to come here. Since I had already been coming here for the living school when it was a live event, I had the usual thing, fallen in love with New Mexico. A couple of sunsets will do that. And then all these wonderful people. And here I am, 14 months later.
Well, fantastic. We're all the better for having you here.
Well, can I put a plug for you?
Well, sure.
Okay, I like what you're doing. I like what you're doing. You're one of those cool people I've met since I've been here.
Well, thank you.
And there's quite a few. And I hope that the Peace and Justice Center will thrive with a little bit more youth.
Well, that's certainly our goal. And, you know, I'm happy to say that, you know, as we approach our 40th year, we're beginning to attract younger people in. I walk in here and almost every day there's a new young face that's coming in the door to sign up for something. And so that's encouraging. That's really encouraging. Well, and, you know, young people tend to have jobs and have less time, and, you know, they're students. And so we see a lot of them. We see even more of the young people on weekends when we're doing food distro. Absolutely. Yeah, it's very festive there on Saturday morning. Oh, it is. Intergenerational for sure. That's for sure. I was going to replug for the Catholic Worker. We have the same issue in that I'm on Social Security, so there's no income associated with the position, although I do live here for free and I get the finest of foods from Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. But it's hard for somebody who needs to be working and has a social life and other obligations outside, because we do have an expectation that people volunteer. But the positive side is that it's very tangible what we're doing, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, that's my appeal to somebody younger than I am to do that. I can say honestly that I resemble that remark. So we've got about a minute left, Ed, and I was wondering if there were some things that you might want to share with us in terms of future direction or any upcoming programs or changes that could be happening at Trinity House that you might want to share with us?
Well, I've been here a little over a year. I'm still in discernment as to where my talents are best spent, but advocacy around housing, particularly in the international zone. We're already doing food distribution out there at the other Catholic worker house several days a week, as are other people. You've got a tiny house community over there. You've got New Life Homes, which is converting motels into low-income housing and so forth. For me personally, I'm going to get more involved in housing advocacy, to go with food advocacy. So, because the folks that we're feeding are generally living in the tent. So
right.
There's a disconnect in this town between what's vacant and available and what people are actually able to get in. And I don't know the system. I don't know that much about housing, but there seems to be an awful lot of red tape between the folks living in the street and the housing that's available. That's one area. Criminal justice reform, I dabbled in that a little bit with a lawyer here who's doing wonderful work suing the penal system for medical malpractice, for the extremely poor level of care that inmates get. I'm sure there are other directions that I'm not thinking of at the moment, but it's kind of a free-form opportunity for advocacy. That's what I like about it. If there's a need to house refugees, we can scramble and do that. Or we can take stuff to El Paso, to the Annunciation House and other organizations that are housing asylum seekers. It's kind of a combination of service and advocacy. The service without advocacy, I think, is inadequate, and you really need to get down and do the work to be a good advocate. That's my thinking on that. So there may be other areas that other members of the House are pursuing. The idea being we don't have to do the same thing, but we all have to be engaged in something.
Well, it's wonderful that you're doing the things that you're doing and that you're headed in those directions as well. That's right in keeping with a lot of the work that we're talking about doing here at Peace and Justice. And so it's fortunate for us in particular that you're doing that, because we're partners there and we're headed in the same direction, I think. And so we're fortunate to have you. And
we're fortunate to have you.
Thank you. And Albuquerque is fortunate to have you as well. And we just look forward to.
Hey, it's a heck of a town. I knew that Albuquerque was such a happening town.
Right. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here.
Yeah, you're not kidding. You're not kidding. So we look forward to, locking arms, walking hand in hand, and through this journey together. And we're going to be talking to you again real soon. Ed Singularity.
Actually, I'd love to go back.
Thank you so much. Take care.
I'll see you at the food distribution. I'll reserve some pastries.
Love it. Love it. I'll come out to that.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Thank you,
Hey,
Ed.
Jim. Thank you.
Trinity House, just making a great contribution to Albuquerque. Thanks so much for that. We are joined now by our director, our show's director, Tom Dent, a walking library of information as well. That's why it's always good, because when Tom talks about things that are going on here, I get smarter. So, Tom, what do we got to talk about today?
Well, you need to talk about the press conference you attended on Wednesday in Morelos with the Stop the Stadium group.
There were about 40 people, 50 people that turned out for the Stop the Stadium press conference on Wednesday morning at this incredible house. And I'll tell you, if the house was up for sale, I'd buy it myself. It's a beautiful house. It's been there for a long, long time. And it's one of the houses that is right in the path of this crazy stadium. So we've got to do everything we possibly can to keep it from getting torn down and keeping the stadium out of that. That's one of two communities that they're talking about putting the stadium, and it just means bad news no matter where it goes.
Well, Bareilles and Martineztown are some of the oldest and most respectable neighborhoods. They're the neighborhoods that built Albuquerque.
That's right. That's right. Somebody said maybe we should put it over on Country Club, see how the people over there might like that. They've got lots of green grass, so you can just build around the green grass and let them play soccer over there.
Well, what's going on at the Peace Center lately?
Well, at the Peace Center, wow, we are gearing up for some really interesting things at the Peace Center. We are gearing up for our annual gala, and Tom, I know you take the lead on making that happen, and last year's gala was incredible. It was all virtual, and it's going to be all virtual again this year, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun for all our members and everybody that's tuning in to social media, YouTube, whatever, across the country to enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's our major fundraiser for the year, and it's December 11th, so we need everybody to tune in, help us out, and donate to the Peace Center.
And we're bringing back movie night. And movie night has always been a major hit at the Peace Center. And on October 26th, we are going to be introducing a film called Battle for Brooklyn. Very timely in its discussion because it's all about how Brooklyn fought back against a stadium being built there. And so admission is free, but you can always bring donations. Mm-hmm. But that's going to happen 6 o'clock on October 26th at the Peace and Justice Center.
And we're also plugging into Giving Tuesday, right?
And Giving Tuesday. Giving Tuesday is the Tuesday week before Thanksgiving, when we encourage people to just take a moment, pause, and think about great organizations like the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice. When you can give, you can make major donations, you can make minor donations, whatever your pocket will allow. So stay tuned because we'll be getting information out about Giving Tuesday.
And last Saturday we had our annual yard sale. A lot of people were worried about it because of COVID, but a bunch of people showed up, made a good deal of donations to the Peace Center, and we want to thank everybody who came out.
Yeah, it was a wonderful event. I came out and hung around for a while myself and ended up buying a few things. But the items that people donate to the center to be sold as a part of the yard sale, it's just a wonderful experience. And so we're just looking forward to doing that again next year.
And we got donated some big end items that we're saving for the silent auction during our holiday gala on December 11th.
Exactly. So we're going to be closing out today with music from a very interesting group. And Tom, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's another blast from the past. We used to dance to these guys in Albuquerque all the time. This clip is from 1984. This is the Muttz out of Taos that the famous Chris Dracup came out of. And the song is called Take All My Love.
See you next week.
Maybe I should stop by saying there's a shadow on my heart. You know I can't help but praying that we weren't caught 2 worlds apart. You know my heart's open on your love. It's a thing of joy and fear. Can't be broken. Something you can't see or hear, yeah. So take all my love, all my fear, bear my soul. Take all my love, all my fear, bear my soul. soul. Yeah. Baby, I can't help but saying there's a pressure on my heart every time I see love straying. It just tears my mind apart. You know my heart's open on your love. It's a laugh and it's a tear. In a word it can't be spoken, but you can feel it when it's near. Yeah. So take all my love, all my fear, bear my soul. I said take all my love, all my fear, bear my soul. Won't you bear my soul? Won't you let me know? Won't you let me know? Won't you bear my soul?
Until the next time, it's time to say goodbye. When you out here in the streets, keep it real, 505. We love everybody, we just want to let you know. Thanks for tuning in to That Saturday Show.